In this video, we're going to cover boomer bosses and why Gen Z and millennials just can't stand to work with them, right? Boomer bosses, they just don't understand. In fact, a lot of boomers, they're very out of touch with Gen Z and millennials in general. So let's start with Whoopi Goldberg, who's getting completely dunked on in this funny video clip here.
Sorry, if you only want to work 4 hours, it's going to be harder for you to get a house.
Oh, Jesus Christ. First and foremost, Whoopi Goldberg, shut the fuck up. Stop speaking. You have been rich for the last 40 years. You don't get to hop on TV and speak on anybody's lifestyle at all. Shut up. I am so sick of boomers and older people and everybody in that category calling Gen Z and millennials lazy. We're just some generation of people that don't want to work. We just want everything handed to us. We're just super entitled. Cut the bullshit. Stop the cap. That $500, $600, $700 apartment that you had when you were in your 20s, that apartment that you could afford and still save money to buy a house one day, that house that was $30, $40, $50,000 when you were little, quadruple that shit. That's what we're paying nowadays. With wages that don't match the increase in pricing. Let's talk about that. The wages, they don't match the increase in pricing at all. So I don't want to hear y'all say we're lazy and we're entitled. Motherfucker, we are working. Most of the people I know are working 40 plus hours a week, 50 plus hours. Some are working 60 plus hours a week. And then when they get their paycheck for their hard work, they pay their bills and then they hope for the best until their next paycheck. So don't look at us like we're fucking lazy and crazy, because we're pissed off about the state of the economy, the housing market, groceries, everything like that. A friend of mine just told me she went to Chili's. Fucking Chili's last night. 2 drinks, 2 meals, and dessert, $100+ for a fucking dinner at a restaurant. I used to go to Applebee's when I was little. It was like $30, $40 for my whole family. Now 2 people got to go spend over $100? You see how that don't make no fucking sense?
So he's making a great point here, right? Now, if you look up online, Whoopi Goldberg, firstly, she's made a bunch of dumb political takes in the last few weeks, so there's that. But also, her net worth, based on what we have online, is $60 million. Now, of course, that could be lying, but she's definitely a multi-millionaire, right? We don't know what actually the number is. Information online is all based on rumors, but there's a lot of points here that boomers, they tend to think Gen Z and millennials are lazy, but people have nothing to work for or to earn for because the housing's so unaffordable unless you want to be in crippling debt or you've got enough money to put down a decent deposit. The inflation in fast food or even rent prices in major cities like London and New York has gone up 30 to 40% in the last 4 years since the whole fake lockdown thing that everyone had to deal with. So the thing is, it's like even basic amenities, even short-term fixes, short-term dopamine hits of maybe fast food or things like that, even that's becoming overpriced for people. There's some cases I've heard of, the advice to save money is, not to buy a coffee outside, not to buy a $4 coffee, for example, or to cancel your subscriptions to Netflix or Amazon Prime and things like that, or Spotify. Now, I understand that can save a little bit of money, but that's not really the answer here. And it's just, if people are being expected to kind of save $10 here or $100 here, yeah, that's good, but that's not really the answer to a really broken economy where people don't have families, relationships, community. There's no really hope here, right? Even if people save and invest, all they can really save and invest for in many cases is essentially trying to retire somewhat early or live a minimalistic life and pursue that path. There's not really a sustainable way for many people to have a healthy relationship, marriage, family, kids. It's just become completely ridiculous in those terms, right? Now, even simple things he mentions, going to a restaurant like Chili's or any other kind of fast food place where, it might be a sit-down meal and it was $40 for your whole family and all of a sudden it's $100. Things are getting worse, they're not getting better. Things are being quite obviously rigged in a not very obvious way in your face. It's not like we can blame everything on a conflict in Eastern Europe or the Middle East and it's the price of oil, whatever garbage reason they normally bring up in the past for things getting worse. It's very obvious the government's wasting your tax money. The system's deliberately giving advantage to certain groups that might benefit the government's initiatives, like open border policies, bias against men. It's like all obvious manipulation. They're not even trying to be smart with their manipulative strategies, right? Now, every generation should have it easier and not harder. And what I mean by that is humans should have advanced so much at this point. It's like things are regressing and becoming more difficult, People are living in smaller houses or smaller apartments compared to their parents. Parents might have had a 4-bedroom house, then the next generation had 3-bedroom houses or small apartments, and it went from having 10 kids, two generations in the past, to 5 kids, to 2 kids, to no kids, and just getting a pet. And some people can't afford having a pet now, or the time that it takes to have a pet, because they got to work their main job and a side hustle and do all their chores and things like that. It's just become very unsustainable for people to kind of want to participate in this society. That's why I'm not telling anyone what to do, but I think the real answer for a lot of people, because unless there's some kind of group, how can I say it, group revolution in a peaceful way to overthrow the current establishment, which I don't think is going to happen, even though there are signs that point in that direction. The best option for many people is try to pursue a combination of fulfilling your purpose and a minimalistic lifestyle, and then making the most of your life here, and thinking very carefully before you do make a major financial decision, like buying an expensive house, getting married, having kids, things like that, which can really, be life-changing decisions you can't walk back after. If the inflation rate goes up another 30%, can you really afford all of those type of lifestyle decisions? So it's very interesting to kind of consider those things, right? And even with politics, like I say, politicians, left-wing, right-wing, haven't really had positive impacts on people's lives. If you compare either one, I don't think they've got the solutions. Right-wing might be better than left in terms of capitalism and things like that, but no real answers there. And the thing is, the rent is high, cost of living is high, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. People don't mind working. Gen Z, millennials, they don't mind working. I'm sure this guy doesn't mind putting in, 40 hours, 60 hours a week, whatever it be. But if there's a light at the end of the tunnel, like, oh, I can finally buy that house, I can finally, afford kids, or finally live a more comfortable, relaxed life. This whole thing that you got to be on this very intense hamster wheel that is going around faster and faster. The rat race is going faster and faster, and you're getting less and less for it. Less and less money in your pocket due to high inflation and tax. Less and less positive outcomes. Lower quality of living. Lower living standards. Lower job stability, less job security, and you're expected to work even harder for even less. It just doesn't make sense, and people are gonna, even the dumbest person walking the street is going to be able to figure out something isn't right and things are rigged against them. So let's go through this list in a bit of detail. So we have this top 8 reasons why Gen Z and millennials don't want to work with boomers, right? So the first thing here, it goes through how, working with boomers, they can be quite slow, especially if we're better at technology than them. And it can be quite annoying to work with people who are in positions of power who really should have been removed from positions of power and retired. Now, we can talk about sleepy Joe Biden. We can talk about Bernie Sanders. We can talk about these kind of aging figures who are really out of touch with the youth. And I don't mean that in a political sense, but I mean them that, you can see the way Joe Biden kind of conducts himself, how some older employees at your particular company are in very senior positions of power, earning a lot of money, maybe not be doing a lot. I remember working at a major investment bank one time, and this is how ridiculous it is. This is how ridiculous it is. I'll explain it to you. I remember working at a major investment bank, and they had one entire team where the purpose of what the team was expected to do wasn't clear. And they had a senior manager who was in his 60s. And no one understood what is going on here. Why do we have this 60-year-old manager managing a team where it's not even clear what the team is actually meant to do? They would actually come up with projects to review customer accounts, to come up with ideas for developing the particular department, which is managing risk around financial crime and things like that, and how to manage those risks at the company across the investment banking, asset management, private banking, things like that. And it was already quite suspicious to me, like, what is going on here? And then as many months went by, 6 months to a year, all of a sudden, that manager wasn't here and the team was split up. And then what I realized is this department had basically created this fake team just to give this senior manager who's 60 years old, coming up to his age of retirement, some work to do so he could retire comfortably, get a decent retirement package, and then the other younger managers could kind of take over and disseminate the members of the team in different roles. So this is what I mean about how ridiculous it is. The boomers really do have an easy life. They really do get a lot of preferential treatment. I know some people might disagree, and that's fine. I'm just giving you an example of how it can work. And they kind of have this kind of easy exit option outside to leave the corporate job, right? I've seen many cases of this. They just live kind of an easy, comfortable life. They're just managing a bit of office politics, and it's kind of easy for them. Let's go through some reasons why people don't like dealing with boomers. Now, boomers here, they use reply all. Boomers are far too liberal when using the reply all button. Young people are much more personable with their approach to work and don't like their business broadcasted to the entire company. And this is the thing, is boomers really want their presence to be known. They want their sense of authority and things like that. And normally people don't mind paying respect to their elders within reason, right? What is expected here is that boomers are so out of touch with reality with the younger generations, as we just covered, with the older generations not understanding Gen Z and Millennials in terms of lack of motivation to work, lack of purpose and community and things like that. But these boomers think just because they're older, they're wiser. You know, just because someone has more of a elderly life experience, that they know more. But that's not always the case. Just because someone's older doesn't mean they're wiser, and that's a key thing to remember about boomers. That's why boomers give you so many dumb, useless advice that you just can't find useful. You know, why you should get married even though there's major risks there, why you should work hard at your job when there's like no incentive to do it. It's actually incentive to do less hard work. So this is how they waste time at work. Now, unnecessary phone calls. According to the survey, one respondent said, "My qualm is how they ring your mobile with no regard for your calendar. Like, you know, you're in meetings all day, then they give you phone calls." And they also use calls to say it's easier to explain over the phone rather than send you an email. And this is something that's really important to really factor in. I've dealt with this multiple times. I and probably other people, millennials and Gen Z, it's just easier to type things. We all tend to type messages to each other, type posts on Twitter or whatever it is. Typing a quick message, a quick chat, quick email, it's just easy for us. And then I remember so much emphasis of managers telling me, you need to put down a phone call, you need to have a phone call, stop typing emails to people, stop chatting people, go and walk over and talk to them, go and give them a call. And it's like, it's just a quick message. Does it really matter whether it's an email or IM chat, instant message chat, or I go and speak with them? And all these older generation people, they want to speak with you in person. And an important point here is that they're saying they want you to have phone calls because there's no paper trail, and then if there's an error they can just blame you. And that's the thing, right? There's two benefits of just typing things out. You just don't have to deal with people face to face who can be quite annoying, but there's a track record there. And I remember in one specific instance whereby I dealt with so many petty points pointed out about my performance, and then what I was doing, because I knew they were going to try and push me out the door or something, I would just basically take so many screenshots of all the ridiculous instructions they might give to me on email or on chat. And that's why it's important to have things in writing. And then I kept a track record of that. And then one quarter went in where they made a few comments about my work. I said, these are the instructions I've been getting. And one of those were my manager, who came from a different country. They understood and spoke English for, over 15 years, but they would just deliberately be kind of lazy with their English. I had a female Japanese manager, and she was saying, you need to be able to cook these items. And she would just use completely ridiculous language, even though, like I say, she spoke English quite clearly. I took screenshots of that, saying things like cook this when it's work tasks in an office is just ridiculous. Or she'd give me instructions, can you go and ask this person one thing? And then I'd follow the instructions and go and walk up to their desk and speak to them at their desk rather than sending a message. And then I would give her the answer back on the instant message. And then she'd ask me another thing, another two things to ask them. And then I'd say, well, you can't give me bit piece things. Like go up to this person's desk and ask them one thing. Then 2 minutes later, go and ask them this. 3 minutes later, go and ask them that. And I kept a track record of that. And this was indefensible type of actions from what they've done, right? And so when they talk about, you haven't done this properly, I'm saying I'm not getting clear instructions from the manager, or they're giving me instructions in an inefficient way. Now, every little mistake about you will get pointed out if they want to get rid of you. If they like you, they'll probably overlook some of that. So that's why I recommend you keep a track record in writing of all the dumb BS that they say and do to you. You don't have to tell them, but have it in your back pocket to spring it up on them as a surprise when they do try to F you over and screw you over. So, like I say, examples of that, screenshots from instant messaging, emails of when they told you some things and what the specific deadlines are, or co-workers who are always late on giving you the work back in terms of a joint project. So you've always got ability to cover yourself. Well, I asked for this. I remember asking for a kind of mid-level or senior manager on a trading floor for some seating plans so we can discuss the kind of risks of different teams sitting next to each other. And she dragged it out for 3 weeks. It's something she could have really given me in like 2 minutes. But she just dragged it out. She's so busy. I know where she sits. So I could see her from my desk constantly throughout the day. She's chit-chatting with co-workers, having coffees, going out doing this. I would constantly chase her. She delayed one of my important risk management reviews by 3 weeks. And then when I was late, my manager was having a go at me, and I was like, well, I've got a track record of this. But like I say, they manufacture the narrative however they want, and they'll blame you even if it's someone else's fault. That's why getting things in writing, protecting yourself, there's another term in finance, and I'm sure other industries, CYA, cover your ass, which basically means make sure you're maintaining a track record that nothing's actually your fault. So let's go through this in a bit more detail, right? So unnecessary phone calls. Let's listen to some examples of how annoying these people can be.
So much. Let's get right into it.
I really don't know how much more I could take of the Gen Z and boomer work environment. It's just so annoying to have these two dynamics in place. And on top of that, you know, it's so many people like myself that's in their 20s that done did the work. We done went to school. People have became lawyers, doctors, all that, nurse practitioners, whatever. And we come into these workplaces and we're trying to run things more smoothly. And you got people who've been here for a million years that feel like nothing needs to change, and that is not acceptable. Hell, we even got people in the White House that's 102 years old, hooked up to ventilators and can't even fucking breathe. That makes sense for our country. That shit is out of control. Now, I don't know how much more I can take of this in the workplace, okay? Like, it's gonna have to be some compromise. Shit can't run smoothly when we got 20-year-olds and 60-year-olds. Like, your way is not the only way. Why not try to get, like, it's literally 2024. It's not 1956 no more. Like, we need to cut the bullshit. We need shit to run smoothly. Listen to us.
Sorry.
So she does have a good point there, right? So Gen Z are realizing that, you know, workplaces, as I say, are deliberately inefficient. They don't quite get yet, because they're a bit naive. They don't fully get how the game is deliberately rigged. They think, oh, something's inefficient, maybe we should improve it. The systems are deliberately inefficient, right? And another society in the economy will snap under the pressure. These generational conflicts. Not only is there conflict between left wing and the right wing, there's conflict between, you know, the genders, straight people, not straight people, things like that. But also between, you know, the generations. Like I say, if Gen Z are getting kind of annoyed, they're not going to be able to tolerate this. I know her life specifically, right? But I doubt someone like this who is already getting frustrated in their early 20s with their corporate career, are they going to be able to kind of survive dealing with this for several decades? It just doesn't seem sustainable, right? And they don't realize that things are not intended to change. They're intended to stay the same way. You're meant to kind of play by a set of inefficient rules. And that's what's kind of interesting, is that you have skilled Gen Z people or even millennials, but there's not a lot of options for maneuverability. It's kind of like you can use your skills, but in this very rigid failing system that's obviously failing and obviously working against you. You know, we've got politician examples like Joe Biden, as she was talking about, too much power with older generations who are not that invested in improving things. You know, if the system's completely broken, but it works for the people in position of power, Gen Z and Millennial are going to get frustrated because they're not on the receiving end of that broken system's benefits. You know, the older generations who might be completely comfortable with there being bloated senior management and middle management, because they're getting paid high salaries for not doing much work and bossing you around to do the actual work. You know, same thing with politicians. You know, they don't have a problem if your life's going to hell and you can't afford to buy a house or climb the corporate ladder, if they're getting paid tons of money because they invested in assets before the inflation and they're making a ton of money off those investments, right? So those are the type of things that you need to bear in mind. And next up we have, can you Google it, please, right? Boomers tend to eat up all your time with questions they could answer themselves via the internet, according to the survey, asking technology questions that they could easily Google. And I realized this, but I wouldn't just say it's all boomers, but just older generations, Gen Z and millennials will just get dumped with tech questions that maybe we don't know, or that it should go to the tech team. We're not necessarily tech experts compared to the older generations, just because we're maybe a bit more quicker using our phone. Other things would be outdated language, you know, passive aggressive culture of saying loves, dolls, darlings, things like that. There's so much passive aggressiveness in the work environment. I don't want to put it all on boomers, but there is a lot of that. And also things they're outdated with is just understanding, as I say, the living circumstances of our generation. And a good example here is this.
To this point, because I'll go grocery shopping for my mom, who is a boomer, and like trying to explain to her that milk is like $5 now instead of like $3.98 or something like that is literally the worst to explain her. She's handing me cash and I'm like, Mom, you don't have enough here to pay for what you're asking me to go get. She's like, yeah, no, literally, like, look at the website. You are not handing me enough money. And I really do feel like the disconnect there is because so many things have changed from their economy. Their economy does not exist anymore. You can't buy a house working a part-time, a full-time job that is not a career that you have to go to school for.
So she's making a good point here, right? This is how out of touch the boomer class is. Food prices, living costs, there's two different realities. Like I say, that there's a reason why those, I don't want to say all boomers, but I would just say a lot of older people in their late 40s and older, they're completely fine with the way the system works, the way the corporate environment works. It's all rigged in their favor. They're just like, oh, why aren't you coming to work happy? Why don't you have a more positive attitude coming to work? It's just like, why would I? You know, I'm underpaid, overtaxed, and there's not possibility of a better future for me. This is just the most relatable thing for most people. And those two realities are increasingly out of touch, and the older generations are not keeping up with the rate of change and how bad things are getting for younger generations. About being power hungry, the boomers tend to be more power hungry when it comes to obsessions with promotions and things like that. So the thing is like, people who are younger, we are more focused on climbing the corporate ladder if that's the path we're taking, because we want to earn the highest salaries to keep up with the rate of inflation. And then you've got all these boomers that are overstaying their welcome, not only in politics, but in corporate roles. So it's harder for the younger generations to climb and get ahead in life, right? It's just wasting years of your life trying to play this time-wasting corporate game where you've got to spend 3 years before you make it to vice president. And you go through 10, 15 years to make it to managing director, even if you make it there, even if you have a chance of making it there. It's completely ridiculous, right? So here's another point, making everything a meeting, right? Like I say, they love to be in these time-wasting meetings, love to be in-person activity. And the younger generations, they just prefer technology. A quick message can solve something in 5 minutes, or even a 20-minute back and forth instant message, instead of meeting in person and seeing people face to face. Their obsession with like being in the office, not working from home. These are the type of ridiculous things you see. And this comes to this next point, right, which is the anti-work from home. We see the whole return to the office thing. They don't want people working from home because it shows how pointless a lot of this middle management and senior management is. When people are just left to their own devices, not only could they do their job, they can spend their work hours doing their chores and doing their job. But this older, slower generation doesn't want people to have their freedom. These senior middle management boomers and older generations in general want to show their importance. And the only way they can do that, to pretend that they are important to the company functioning, is if you have the younger generations at work and they can boss them about and lord over them as they're having some kind of added value as a senior manager.
Closer to the office because I cannot afford to. No, that doesn't make sense. I live 10 minutes away from here and my house was quite reasonably priced. And when did you buy that? Almost 40 years ago, actually. Wow. Yeah, it turns out things have gotten worse since then. How much do you know about credit scores? I don't see why this is hard. Okay, your income is very similar to what mine was at the beginning of my career, and I was able to afford a house. Oh, you're just so close to articulating the problem.
So here's the disconnect of the generations. You have a boomer saying that younger generations should live closer to the office when those property prices have increased dramatically, they're unaffordable. You have $1 million apartments near your major business districts like Canary Wharf in London. I'm sure it's the same near Wall Street in New York, right? So you have these completely disconnectual dynamics when it comes to real life dynamics and real life financial dynamics. And they don't understand, these boomers don't understand the second order effects of all these things. So say the younger generations can't afford to live near work, so they have to commute further. Then they have a longer commute each day. They have less time for their free time to maybe focus on their health, preparing their meals, less time to kind of spend time in their relationships. And all of these things really compound, like I say. longer commute. They can't work from home because they have to be in the office because the baby boomer or the older generation wants them to be. They don't have time to even have a relationship, even though gender relations are kind of dysfunctional now. All these factors compound, and they're all linked, and that compounds to the generational difference where people are kind of stressed with each other. And that's it, right? Those are the 8 points. Boomers, older generations are anti-work from home. They prefer to be in meetings. They can be power hungry. They can use outdated language. They can make points around, asking you tech issues when they can actually Google it. Unnecessary phone calls and just wanting a sense of importance by replying all to emails. So that's just really how much stress this generational divide is bringing to this situation. I've worked in finance for over 10 years. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, studied an economics degree at London School of Economics, and I am available to provide you with direct career advice, and I help you navigate these weird generational dynamics. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. Let me know how you feel about working with boomers, and there are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. I'll see you next time.